an 18th century law to a 21st century prison, Trump's crackdown on immigration has taken a shocking turn. Hundreds of Venezuelans were suddenly deported and dumped into one of the harshest mega prisons on Earth. What really happened? Who got sent? And what's life like inside El Salvador's CECOT? Let's break it down. On March 15, 2025, over 260 migrants, most of them Venezuelan men, were loaded onto ICE-chartered flights and deported to El Salvador. These mass deportations were carried out under the Trump administration's intensified crackdown on alleged gang activity. Officials claimed the individuals had ties to Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua and the infamous MS-13. But here's the shocker. Many had clean records and pending asylum claims. Some deportees had valid work permits. Families weren't even notified. They only found out after spotting their loved ones in viral videos, shackled and herded off planes. The scene was jarring, barefoot, heads down, arms bound. It painted a picture of guilt before any trial, and for many, it wasn't just a deportation. It felt like an abduction. But how did this sweeping action happen so fast, bypassing courtrooms and protections? Let's talk about the dusty old law Trump used to make it all possible. To fast-track deportations without due process, Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a law created during John Adams's presidency to expel citizens from hostile nations during wartime. It's been used only 3 times in U.S. history, during the War of 1812 and both World Wars. So why now? Trump called Tren de Aragua a terrorist group and argued the U.S. was under threat. That gave him the authority to deport anyone linked to it without needing a court hearing. Civil liberties groups immediately challenged the legality of using this ancient law in peacetime. But by the time Judge Boasberg issued a restraining order to block deportations, the flights had already taken off. The government claimed it was too late. Planes were mid-air. The order couldn't undo what had already been set in motion. And buried beneath this legal mess was a serious mistake that would soon come to light. One of the men deported, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, should have been protected. A Maryland judge had already ruled he could not be sent to El Salvador due to risk of harm. He lived with his U.S. citizen wife and disabled child. Still, ICE put him on a plane to CECOT, El Salvador's most notorious prison. Even the Justice Department later admitted it was an administrative error. His lawyers were stunned. In court filings, they argued the deportation violated multiple legal rulings and human rights protections. The government, however, said it was too late. He's now in foreign custody and they have no jurisdiction. This one case alone raised serious alarm bells. If someone with legal protection could be deported by mistake, how many others were sent without proper checks? The deeper reporters dug, the more shocking stories they uncovered, including women who were tricked into boarding that flight. 8 Venezuelan women were placed on the same deportation flights as the men, but when they landed, El Salvador refused to accept them. ICE never informed the women of their destination. They were told they were being sent to Venezuela. Only upon landing did they learn the truth. 2 of them, Heymar Padilla Moyatones and Scarlett Rodriguez, spoke out from a detention center in Texas. They said ICE agents kept them on the plane and flew them back. Their fear was real, being misled, detained, and sent to a country they had no ties to. Others on board didn't fare so well. They were sent straight to CECOT, and their families still don't know their fate. One woman, left behind on the bus, was told, "Thank God you're not on that plane. It's not going to Venezuela." These accounts prove how chaotic and secretive the entire operation was. And how did officials even decide who to deport? The answer is more bizarre than you'd expect. ICE agents used a controversial and shockingly vague checklist to determine alleged gang ties. According to court documents, tattoos of stars, crowns, or clocks, wearing Chicago Bulls jerseys, or even owning high-end urban streetwear were considered signs of Tren de Aragua membership. One deportee, Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, had crown tattoos for sentimental reasons. One next to mom, one next to dad. They were tributes to his parents and a Christmas festival from his hometown. He was also a makeup artist, but ICE flagged him as a gang member and deported him to CECOT without any criminal conviction. Experts and lawyers criticized this approach as absurd and deeply flawed. Using fashion choices or symbolic tattoos as grounds for imprisonment? That's not law enforcement, that's profiling. But what is this CECOT place anyway? And why is everyone so afraid of it? Let's take a closer look at the prison itself. CECOT, or the Terrorism Confinement Center, is Latin America's largest prison, located in a remote part of El Salvador. Opened in 2023 by President Nayib Bukele, it can hold up to 40,000 inmates. Built like a fortress, the facility is designed to house the most dangerous gang members, including mass murderers and warlords from MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Inside, the reality is bleak. Inmates are packed 65 to 70 per cell with barely enough room to sit. They sleep on metal bunks with no mattresses or pillows. For 23.5 hours a day, they're locked up. The only time they're allowed out is for short, supervised group exercise or religious sessions. There are no visits, no calls, and no legal access, unless arranged by authorities. This prison has no rehabilitation programs or second chances. It's designed to punish, not to reform. But how does the US justify sending migrants, many unconvicted, into such brutal conditions? As part of the arrangement, the US agreed to pay El Salvador $6 million to imprison Venezuelan deportees for 1 year at CECOT. This financial deal, quietly negotiated ahead of the March flights, covered housing, food, and security for the transferred inmates. But critics call it outsourcing punishment. President Bukele eagerly accepted the offer. His tough-on-crime stance has made him wildly popular in El Salvador, even as rights groups warn of rising abuses. With US dollars helping fund his mega prison, the arrangement was a win-win for Bukele politically, and a quick fix for Trump's deportation agenda. Still, many questioned morality. If someone hasn't been convicted of a crime, how can a government pay to imprison them in a foreign country? For some families left behind in the US, the answer wasn't just political. It was personal, heartbreaking, and full of fear for what might happen next. The deportations didn't just remove people, they shattered families. Take Jefferson Laya Freitz, a Venezuelan father of 5 who lived in Colorado. He had a work permit, a clean record, and a pending asylum claim. ICE still arrested him, and days later he was in CECOT. His wife only found out after recognizing him in prison footage online. Left behind, she's now raising their kids alone. She still hasn't heard from her husband and doesn't know if he's safe, or if she'll ever see him again. "I do everything because I have to keep going for my kids," she told reporters. But even her children, confused and scared, ask if their father is ever coming back. Meanwhile, back in court, judges and lawyers scrambled to figure out how this even happened. Under U.S. law, Judge James Boasberg of the U.S. District Court in D.C. issued an emergency restraining order to block deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. But when he asked government lawyers whether planes were already in the air, they dodged the question. Turns out, they were. And they didn't turn back. As photos surfaced of deportees arriving in El Salvador, Bukele himself posted a taunting tweet, "Oopsie, too late," followed by a laughing emoji. It was a diplomatic slap in the face and a chilling sign of how casually legal orders were ignored. The judge later said the government might have acted in bad faith. Legal advocates called it a constitutional crisis, with immigration law and international rights thrown aside in the name of security. And while the drama unfolded in court, inside CECOT, life was already hell for those who had just arrived. CECOT is not a place for the faint-hearted. Prisoners there don't get trials, phone calls, or even privacy. Surveillance cameras and armed guards monitor them constantly. Each cell has only basic cement fixtures, no beds, no lights off, and 2 open toilets. The lights stay on 24/7. There are no family visits, no rehabilitation programs, no schooling or skill building. Food is limited to beans, rice, and pasta, served through cell bars like in an apocalyptic movie. Some prisoners reportedly share 6 square feet of space each. That's smaller than a yoga mat. Even prisoners who've never been convicted are treated like the worst criminals in the world. For many deported Venezuelans, CECOT is a place they don't belong, but now must survive. With so many voices rising against this operation, the question now becomes, will anyone be held accountable? So was this justice, or just chaos disguised as policy? Families torn apart, legal orders ignored, and human rights in question, Trump's El Salvador deportations have left more scars than solutions. Will this continue? Or will the courts finally step in? What do you think? Is safety worth sacrificing lives and due process? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.